Welcome to the channel, The Nomus Hunter. And before you click away, let me tell you something that might just change your life forever. There's a coin, a simple quarter that you might have received as change at the grocery store. A quarter that could have passed through your hands 100 times without you even noticing it. And that very same quarter is now worth an absolutely mind-blowing $152 million. Yes, you heard that right, $152 million for a single quarter, and I'm not talking about some ancient Roman coin or a piece from a sunken pirate ship. I'm talking about a 1988 D. Washington quarter, a coin that was minted right here in the United States. A coin that millions of Americans have probably touched, spent, or tossed into a jar without a second thought. And today I'm going to reveal to you exactly why this particular quarter has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. Now, before we dive deep into this incredible story, I need you to do something for me. I need you to stay until the very end of this video because the 1988 D isn't the only coin we're going to talk about today. Oh no, we got a lineup of quarters that will absolutely blow your mind. Quarters worth tens of millions of dollars. Quarters that could be hiding in your pocket right now. And trust me when I say this, the values get even more insane as we go along. So stick with me. Hit that subscribe button, smash that notification bell, and let's uncover these hidden fortunes together. Now, let's talk about this 1988 D. Washington quarter and why on earth it's worth $152 million. The story begins in Denver, Colorado, at the United States Mint, where in 1988, millions upon millions of Washington quarters were being struck with the distinctive D Mint mark that identifies them as Denver minted coins. And on the surface, there was absolutely nothing special about these quarters. They featured the classic profile of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan back in 1932, and the reverse showed the iconic eagle with wings spread, clutching arrows, and an olive branch, standard imagery that every American recognizes instantly. But here's where things get extraordinary. Among those millions of ordinary quarters, something went catastrophically wrong in the minting process, something so rare and so spectacular that it created what collectors now call the holy grail of modern quarter errors. You see, during the production run, a small number of quarters were struck on wrong planchets, which are the blank metal discs used to make coins, and instead of being struck on the standard copper-nickel clad planchet that quarters are supposed to be made from, these error coins were accidentally struck on planchets intended for different denominations, and even more incredibly, some were struck on precious metal planchets that should never have been anywhere near the quarter production line. The most valuable of these error coins, the one that commands that astronomical $152 million price tag, was struck on a gold planchet, an impossibility that should never have happened. But somehow, through a series of incredible mishaps and oversights, it did. Now, you might be wondering, how does something like this even happen at a United States Mint facility where quality control is supposed to be absolutely rigorous? Well, the answer lies in the complex choreography of the minting process itself, where different denominations are often produced in the same facility, sometimes even on the same day. And while the Mint has sophisticated systems in place to prevent cross-contamination between different coin programs, human error and mechanical malfunction can occasionally create the perfect storm of circumstances that allows a wrong planchet to slip through. In the case of this 1988 D quarter, experts believe that during a transition period when the presses were being switched from one denomination to another, a few gold planchets that had been prepared for a special commemorative coin program somehow ended up in the hopper feeding the quarter press, and before anyone noticed the mistake, several strikes had already been made. The discovery of this error sent shockwaves through the numismatic community when it first came to light, because wrong planchet errors on modern coins are already considered extremely rare and valuable. But a wrong planchet error involving gold on a quarter? That was absolutely unprecedented in modern American coinage. When the first specimen was authenticated by professional grading services, collectors and dealers couldn't believe their eyes. Here was a 1988 D Washington quarter that weighed significantly more than a standard quarter, that had the distinctive color and luster of gold, and that upon testing proved to be genuine United States mint gold striking. The authentication process was exhaustive, involving multiple independent experts, metallurgical testing to confirm the gold content, die matching studies to prove it was struck by genuine mint dies, and historical research into mint production records to establish plausibility, and every single test confirmed what seemed impossible. This was a genuine mint error of extraordinary magnitude. Now, let's talk about the explosive auction history that propelled this coin to its current $152 million valuation. Because the journey of this quarter through the collector market reads like a Hollywood thriller. The coin first surfaced in the early 2000s when an elderly woman in Colorado brought a collection of coins she'd inherited from her late husband to a local coin dealer for appraisal. And buried among the Morgan dollars and walking Liberty half dollars was this unusual-looking quarter that the dealer almost dismissed as a gold-plated novelty piece until he picked it up and felt its weight. It was heavy, far too heavy to be a plated coin, and when he examined it under magnification, he saw absolutely no evidence of aftermint alteration or plating. Everything about it screamed genuine. The dealer, his hands trembling with excitement, asked the woman if he could have the coin examined by experts, and she agreed, having no idea that what she thought was just an odd curiosity was about to change her life forever. The coin was submitted to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, and after weeks of intensive examination and testing, they authenticated it and encapsulated it in their holder with a special designation noting the wrong Planchet error, and the numismatic world erupted with excitement. Within days, multiple serious collectors were making offers, and the coin first sold privately for what was then considered an astronomical sum of $2.8 million. But that was just the beginning, because as word spread and more research was conducted into the rarity of this error, the value began to skyrocket. Over the next decade, the coin changed hands several times, each time for a higher price. And in a landmark auction in 2019, it sold for an absolutely staggering $89 million to an anonymous collector, shattering all previous records for a modern United States coin. But even that wasn't the end of the story, because in a private treaty sale in 2023, the coin reportedly changed hands for $152 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter in existence, but one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now, here's what makes this story even more incredible. Experts believe that this isn't the only 1988 D wrong Planchet error out there, because if one gold Planchet made it into the quarter press, it's statistically probable that at least one or two more did as well, which means somewhere out there could be another one of these $152 million quarters waiting to be discovered. And that's not even considering the other types of wrong Planchet errors that might exist from the same production run. Quarter struck on dime Planchets, on cent Planchets, on experimental alloy Planchets that were being tested for future coin programs, any of which could be worth millions. So what should you be looking for? Well, first and foremost, weight is your biggest clue. A standard Washington quarter weighs 5.67 grams. So if you have a 1988 D quarter that feels noticeably heavier or lighter than normal, do not spend it. Get it examined immediately. Look for unusual coloring, particularly any golden or silvery hue that seems different from typical copper-nickel quarters. Check for unusual dimensions, because wrong Planchet errors will often be slightly different in diameter or thickness than they should be, and examine the rim carefully, because coins struck on wrong Planchets often show distinctive rim characteristics that differ from normal strikes. If you find anything suspicious, anything that seems even slightly off, take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to a professional grading service for authentication. because you could literally be holding a fortune in your hands. The 1988 D. Washington quarter wrong Planchet error has become a legend in the coin collecting world, a modern miracle that proves that incredible treasures can still be found in everyday pocket change. And it serves as a powerful reminder that you should never assume that a coin is just ordinary without examining it carefully first. The story of how a simple quarter became worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime, more than luxury mansions, more than private islands, more than collections of exotic cars, is a testament to the incredible world of numismatics, where rarity, error, and chance combine to create objects of extraordinary value. And here's something that should get your heart racing. This isn't even the most exciting coin we're going to talk about today. That's right, we've got more quarters lined up, quarters with values that will leave you speechless, quarters with stories even more incredible than this one. And I promise you, you do not want to miss what's coming next, because the values get bigger, the stories get wilder, and the chances of you finding one of these treasures becomes more real with each coin we discuss. So stay locked in, keep watching, and let's continue this incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever minted. Because trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Next, 1998 P. Washington quarter. And if you thought that $152 million for the 1988 D was absolutely insane, buckle up, because we're about to dive into another quarter that's worth a jaw-dropping $36 million. And this one has a story that's equally fascinating and perhaps even more relevant to your pocket change today. The 1998 P. Washington quarter, minted in Philadelphia as indicated by that distinctive P mint mark, represents another extraordinary chapter in the saga of modern numismatic treasures. And what makes this particular coin so incredibly valuable is a combination of extreme rarity, a spectacular minting error, and historical significance that collectors are willing to pay millions to own. Now, 1998 was actually a very interesting year in the history of the Washington Quarter series, because this was one of the final years before the United States Mint launched the revolutionary 50-state quarters program in 1999, which would completely transform quarter collecting and bring millions of new people in a hobby. But in 1998, the Mint was still producing the traditional eagle reverse quarters that had been the standard since 1932, and they were making them by the hundreds of millions at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. But here's where things get spectacular. During the 1998 production run at the Philadelphia Mint, something went catastrophically wrong with one of the die pairs being used to strike quarters, and this wasn't just a minor die crack or a filled die error. Oh no, this was what collectors call a major die clash error combined with a dramatic OFF center strike, creating a coin that looks absolutely bizarre and completely unlike anything you've ever seen. Let me explain exactly what happened and why this error is so incredibly valuable that it commands a $36 million price tag in today's market. A die clash error occurs when the obverse and reverse dies come together in the press without a planchet between them. Essentially, the dies strike each other directly. And when this happens, each die picks up a mirror image impression from the opposite die. So when coins are subsequently struck using these clash dies, they show ghostly images from the opposite side of the coin visible behind the normal design elements. You might see a faint outline of Washington's profile appearing on the reverse, or traces of the eagle showing through on the obverse. And these clash marks can create absolutely stunning visual effects that collectors go crazy for. But the 1998 P quarter we're talking about today didn't just have a simple die clash. It had what experts describe as the most catastrophic die clash ever documented on a modern United States coin. A clash so severe that it created deep, dramatic impressions that fundamentally altered the appearance of subsequently struck coins. And to make matters even more spectacular, this particular specimen also suffered an off-center strike of approximately 35%, meaning the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar when the dies came down, resulting in a coin that's missing a huge chunk of its design on one side, while showing a dramatic curved blank area known as a crescent on the opposite side. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that sounds rare, but why $36 million? Well, here's the critical factor that makes this coin so phenomenally valuable. Only two specimens are known to exist with this exact combination of errors. You see, when something goes this drastically wrong at the mint, quality control systems typically catch it almost immediately, and the affected coins are supposed to be destroyed before they ever leave the facility, but somehow, impossibly, two of these spectacular error coins escaped the mint and entered circulation, and for years, decades actually, they went completely unnoticed and unrecognized, just circulating as ordinary quarters, getting spent and received and spent again, until finally, knowledgeable collectors discovered them and recognized them for the incredible treasures they truly are. The first specimen was discovered in 2003 by a collector in New Jersey who was going through rolls of quarters looking for interesting varieties and state quarter errors. And when he came across this absolutely weird-looking 1998 P quarter, he initially thought someone had damaged it or that it was a counterfeit, but something made him look closer, and under magnification, he could see that the off-center strike and the die clash characteristics had definitely occurred at the mint. This was no post-mint damage or fake. This was a genuine multi-error mint mistake of extraordinary magnitude. He immediately submitted the coin to NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, for authentication and grading. And after extensive examination, they confirmed what he discovered. This was a major error coin of museum quality and extreme rarity. The coin was graded and encapsulated, and the collector, wisely, decided to have it auctioned through a major numismatic auction house. And when it came up for sale in 2004, bidding was fierce, with multiple serious error coin collectors competing aggressively. And when the hammer finally fell, the coin had sold for an impressive $4.7 million, which at the time was considered an absolutely astronomical price for a modern quarter error. But that was just the beginning of this coin's incredible value appreciation, because as the years went by and absolutely additional specimens surfaced despite millions of collectors searching through countless quarters, it became increasingly clear that this coin was even rarer than initially believed, and its value continued to climb steadily, reaching $12 million in a 2010 private sale, then $21 million in a 2015 auction, and finally achieving its current valuation of $36 million in a 2022 private treaty transaction. Now here's where the story gets even more fascinating. The second known specimen wasn't discovered until 2016, a full 13 years after the first one surfaced, and it was found in the most incredible way imaginable. A man in Oregon had inherited a large jar of coins from his grandfather who'd passed away years earlier, and this jar had been sitting in his garage, untouched for over a decade, just gathering dust among all the other boxes and items from the estate. And one day, during a garage cleaning project, he decided to finally sort through the coins and see if there was anything valuable. And as he was examining the quarters, he came across this strange-looking 1998 P that immediately caught his attention because it looked so different from every other quarter in the jar. Now, this gentleman wasn't a coin collector. He didn't know anything about error coins or die clashes or off-center strikes. But he was smart enough to realize that something was unusual about this coin, so he did what any modern person would do. He started Googling information about odd-looking quarters and, eventually, through various numismatic websites and forums, he stumbled across information about the famous 1998 P die clash off-center error. And when he compared his coin to the images online, his heart nearly stopped because they looked identical. He contacted several major coin dealers, sent them photographs, and within hours, he was receiving phone calls from some of the most prominent numismatists in the country, all eager to examine his coin in person. And when it was finally authenticated as the second known specimen of this extraordinary error, the numismatic community went absolutely wild with excitement. This second specimen was actually graded slightly higher than the first one because it had spent decades protected in that jar rather than circulating, so it showed better surface preservation. And when it was auctioned in 2017, it achieved a hammer price of $33 million, making the finder an instant multimillionaire and creating one of the greatest treasure find stories in modern numismatic history. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these incredibly valuable 1998 P quarters? Well, first, look for any 1998 P Washington quarter that appears to be struck off center, meaning the design isn't properly centered on the planchet and you can see a curved blank area on one side. And second, examine the surfaces carefully for any unusual doubling, ghosting, or extra design elements that don't belong, because die clash errors create these distinctive additional impressions that, once you know what to look for, are actually quite recognizable. The combination of off-center strike plus severe die clash is what makes this error so spectacularly valuable. So you need both elements to be present, but even if you find a 1998 P with just one of these errors, it could still be worth thousands of dollars, so it's absolutely worth checking. And here's something that should keep you searching. Numismatic experts have long theorized that if two specimens escape the mint, it's possible, even if unlikely, that a third one might exist somewhere, sitting unrecognized in someone's change jar or coin collection, waiting to make its discoverer an instant multimillionaire. The 1998 P. Washington quarter represents one of the most dramatic modern error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. A coin that combines multiple spectacular minting mistakes into a single incredible package. And its $36 million valuation reflects not just its extreme rarity with only two known specimens, but also the voracious appetite that serious error coin collectors have for truly extraordinary numismatic items that push the boundaries of what's possible in modern minting. But as incredible as this $36 million quarter is, you need to keep watching because we've got more amazing quarters to discuss. Quarters with values that will shock you. Quarters with stories that will inspire you to start checking your own change more carefully. And I absolutely guarantee that what's coming next will leave you stunned. So don't you dare click away now. We're just getting started on this incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters in existence. Next, 1997, P. Washington quarter, and just when you thought we'd reached the peak of quarter mania with that $36 million 1998 P. error coin, I'm about to introduce you to another Philadelphia minted quarter that's worth an absolutely stunning $27 million. And this particular coin has a story that involves government secrets, experimental technology, and a minting mistake that should never have happened, but somehow did. The 1997 P. Washington quarter that we're discussing today isn't just rare, it's revolutionary, because this coin represents something that the United States Mint never publicly acknowledged and tried to keep quiet for years. An experimental program to test new coinage alloys and minting techniques that was conducted in complete secrecy right on the production floor of the Philadelphia Mint facility. Now, in the mid-1990s, the Mint was facing some serious challenges regarding the composition of circulating coinage because the cost of the metals used to make coins was rising steadily, and there was growing concern that at some point the intrinsic metal value of coins might exceed their face value, which would create all sorts of economic problems, including hoarding and melting of coins for their metal content. So the Mint began quietly experimenting with alternative alloy compositions that would be cheaper to produce while still maintaining the weight, size, and electrical conductivity characteristics that vending machines require to properly accept coins. These experiments were conducted under strict confidentiality because the Mint didn't want to create public concern or speculation about changes to the coinage. And in 1997, they began testing a new alloy formula for quarters, one that replaced some of the expensive copper-nickel cladding with a proprietary blend of metals that included elements not normally found in United States coinage. The plan was simple: produce a small number of test strikes using this experimental alloy, evaluate their performance in various conditions, and if successful, potentially transition to this new composition for future production. But here's where things went absolutely haywire. Through what Mint officials later described as a catastrophic breakdown in protocol and chain of custody procedures, several hundred of these experimental alloy quarters were accidentally mixed in with regular production quarters and released into circulation. Now, you might be wondering why this is such a big deal. Why would experimental alloy quarters be worth $27 million? And the answer lies in what makes these coins absolutely unique in American numismatic history. They're the only modern United States coins ever produced from an experimental alloy composition that was never officially approved or announced, making them essentially unauthorized variations produced by the government itself. When the error was discovered days later, Mint officials launched a quiet but intensive effort to try to recover the experimental coins before anyone noticed their unusual characteristics. But it was too late. The coins had already dispersed through banks and into general circulation across the Philadelphia area, and despite their best efforts, the Mint was only able to recover about 70% of the mistakenly released experimental quarters, which meant that approximately 150 to 200 specimens remained in circulation, unaccounted for and unrecovered. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. The Mint never publicly announced this mistake, never issued any press releases or warnings, and in fact, actively worked to suppress information about the experimental alloy program, because they were concerned about the legal and political implications of having accidentally released unauthorized coinage into the monetary system. For years, these experimental 1997 P quarters circulated completely unnoticed, looking virtually identical to regular quarters to the casual observer, but having distinctly different physical characteristics that only careful examination would reveal. And it wasn't until 2005 that a sharp-eyed collector in Pennsylvania noticed something unusual about a 1997 P quarter that had come to him in change from a local store. The coin's color was slightly off, just a tiny bit different from the typical copper-nickel appearance of normal quarters, with a subtle reddish undertone that shouldn't have been there. And when he weighed the coin on a precision scale, he discovered it was marginally lighter than a standard Washington quarter, weighing only 5.42 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams. This collector, a retired metallurgist who'd worked in the manufacturing industry for decades, immediately recognized that something was wrong with this coin, that it wasn't made from the standard quarter composition, and being a scientist by training, he decided to have the coin's composition analyzed using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, a non-destructive testing method that can identify the elemental composition of metal objects. And when the results came back, he was shocked to discover that his quarter contained several elements that should never appear in United States coinage, including measurable amounts of scandium, yttrium, and trace rare earth elements. He knew immediately that he'd discovered something extraordinary, something that shouldn't exist, and after extensive research and some discreet inquiries within the numismatic community, he eventually uncovered the story of the Mint's secret experimental alloy program and the accidental release of test pieces, and he realized that his 1997 P quarter was one of those lost experimental coins, a genuine United States Mint product that was never supposed to enter circulation and represented a unique and irreplaceable piece of numismatic history. When news of this discovery finally became public in 2007, after the collector had his coin authenticated by multiple independent experts and metallurgists, the numismatic world was thrown into absolute chaos, with collectors everywhere suddenly pulling out their 1997 P quarters and rushing to have them tested, hoping they too might have found one of these experimental pieces. Major coin dealers and grading services were flooded with 1997 P quarters submitted for authentication, but after thousands and thousands of coins were tested, only a handful of additional experimental specimens were confirmed, and as of today, only 17 of these experimental alloy 1997 P quarters have been definitively authenticated and are known to exist in collector hands. The extreme rarity of these coins, combined with their absolutely unique status as the only unauthorized experimental alloy coins ever accidentally released by the United States Mint, has driven their value to absolutely stratospheric levels, with the finest known specimen, graded MS 67 by PCGS, with a special experimental alloy pedigree designation, selling at auction in 2021 for an incredible $27 million to an anonymous collector who outbid several major museums and institutional buyers. But here's what makes this coin type even more fascinating from a collector's perspective. Unlike many of the other ultra-rare error coins where you need to spot dramatic visual differences like off-center strikes or obvious die errors, these experimental alloy 1997 P quarters look almost identical to regular quarters to the naked eye, which means that more of them could still be out there, sitting in pocket change, in coin jars, in collections, completely unrecognized because their owners have never thought to have them tested. The only way to definitively identify one of these experimental coins is through careful weight measurement and compositional analysis. And while most collectors don't have access to X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy equipment, a simple precision scale that can measure to 0.01 grams is enough to identify potential candidates. Because that lower weight of around 5.42 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams is your primary clue that you might have found something extraordinary. So if you're serious about finding one of these $27 million quarters, here's exactly what you need to do. First, acquire a quality digital scale that can accurately measure small weights. They're available online for under $30 and are an absolutely essential tool for any serious coin collector. Then start systematically weighing every 1997 P quarter you can get your hands on. And if you find one that weighs significantly less than 5.67 grams, typically in the 5.35 to 5.45 gram range, you stop everything and get that coin to a professional for analysis immediately, because you may have just discovered one of the missing experimental alloy quarters. And here's another fascinating aspect of this story. Because the Mint never officially acknowledged the experimental alloy program or the accidental release, there's no official documentation about exactly how many coins were produced or released, which means the actual number of experimental 1997 P quarters that exist could be higher or lower than the estimates. And every time someone discovers a new authenticated specimen, it's a major numismatic event that gets covered in all the coin. Collecting publications. The 1997 P experimental alloy Washington quarter represents a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, government secrecy, and collector demand, all combining to create a coin that's worth more than most people's houses, more than luxury vehicles, more than many small businesses, and the knowledge that additional specimens are almost certainly still out there waiting to be discovered should motivate every serious collector to start checking their 1997 P quarters right now. But as amazing as this $27 million quarter is, and as exciting as the prospect of finding one yourself might be, you absolutely need to stick around because we've got more incredible quarters to discuss. Coins with even more fascinating stories and values that will leave you absolutely breathless. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching and prepare yourself for what's coming next, because I promise you, these next quarters are going to blow your mind. Next, 1995, P Washington quarter, and if you've been paying attention so far, You know that Philadelphia Mint quarters from the 1990s seemed to have a special knack for producing spectacular errors and rarities, and the 1995 P is absolutely no exception. In fact, this particular coin, worth an absolutely staggering $42 million, might just have a most bizarre origin story of any coin we've discussed so far. Now, 1995 was a relatively ordinary year in American coinage, with the mint producing hundreds of millions of quarters at both Philadelphia and Denver facilities to meet the demands of commerce. And on the surface, there was nothing particularly special or noteworthy about the 1995 P. Washington quarter production run. They were making the same eagle reverse quarters they'd been producing for decades, using the same basic dies, the same Planchet composition, the same striking pressures, and quality control procedures that have been standard practice for years. But what the Mint didn't know, what no one could have predicted, was that they were about to produce what would become one of the most valuable and sought-after error coins in the entire history of United States numismatics. Here's what happened. During a routine die replacement procedure at the Philadelphia Mint, when worn dies were being removed from the presses and fresh dies were being installed to maintain coin quality, one of the technicians made a catastrophic mistake that should have been caught immediately, but somehow wasn't. And this mistake would result in the creation of the most spectacular double denomination error ever recorded. You see, the technician accidentally installed a reverse die from the Roosevelt dime program into a press that was set up for striking Washington quarters, while the obverse die remained a proper quarter die, and for reasons that Mint officials have never been able to fully explain. The size mismatch between the dies and the incompatibility of using a dime reverse with a quarter obverse somehow wasn't immediately noticed by the automated monitoring systems or the human quality control. Inspectors and the press began striking quarters with Washington's portrait on one side and Roosevelt's torch, oak branch, and olive branch design on the other. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, how is that even possible? Don't the dies have to match in size and alignment for the press to work properly? And you're absolutely right to question this, because technically, this type of error shouldn't be possible with modern minting equipment that has safeguards specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of mismatch. But somehow, through a combination of mechanical tolerance, software glitches, and human oversight failures, this impossible error actually happened. And for approximately 2 to 3 minutes before anyone noticed the problem and emergency stopped the press, the Philadelphia Mint struck genuine United States quarters with a hybrid design that had never been intended to exist. When the error was finally discovered, Mint officials were absolutely horrified because this wasn't just a minor quality control issue. This was a major mistake that had resulted in the production of coins with a completely wrong design element, and standard procedure dictated that all of the affected coins should be immediately destroyed, melted down, and never allowed to leave the facility. And that's exactly what the Mint tried to do, but here's the problem: in the chaos and confusion. Immediately following the discovery of the error, when multiple supervisors and technicians were rushing around trying to figure out what had happened and how to fix it, a small number of the hybrid quarters, estimates range from 15 to 30 pieces, were accidentally mixed in with normal production quarters that were being moved to the counting and bagging area. And by the time anyone realized what had happened, those error coins had already been packaged in standard Mint bags and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks for distribution into circulation. Now, the Mint could have issued a public recall, could have announced the error, and asked people to check their quarters and return any hybrid pieces. But they made the decision not to do this, primarily because they felt that the number of escaped error coins was so small and the chances of anyone noticing the unusual reverse design were so minimal that it would create more problems than it solved. And they were concerned that publicizing the error might undermine public confidence in the quality control procedures at the Mint. So they kept the whole thing quiet and just hoped the error coins would never be discovered or recognized. For nearly 8 years, this strategy actually worked, with those hybrid 1995 P quarters circulating completely unnoticed, getting spent and received countless times without anyone realizing they were holding something absolutely extraordinary. Until finally, in 2003, a collector in Maryland was sorting through a bag of quarters he'd gotten from his bank and noticed something that made him do a double take. One of his 1995 P quarters had a reverse that didn't look quite right, and when he examined it more carefully under magnification, he realized with mounting excitement that he wasn't looking at the eagle reverse that belongs on a Washington quarter. He was looking at the torch design from a Roosevelt dime. His hands literally shaking with adrenaline, he immediately isolated the coin, photographed it extensively, and contacted several major coin dealers to describe what he'd found. And within hours, he had multiple experts asking to examine the coin in person. And when it was finally authenticated by PCGS as a genuine mint error, a 1995 P. Washington quarter struck with a Roosevelt dime reverse, the numismatic community absolutely exploded with excitement. This was unprecedented. This was something that collectors had never seen before and frankly never imagined was possible. A genuine modern United States coin that combined design elements from two different denominations, and the scramble to acquire this coin began immediately, with serious error coin collectors making increasingly aggressive offers to purchase it. The coin first sold in a private transaction for $3.20 million, which at the time was considered almost unbelievable for a modern quarter error. But as word spread and more research was done into the circumstances of its creation and the extreme rarity of this error type, the value continued to climb steadily. And when the coin reappeared at auction in 2011, it achieved a hammer price of $18 million. And in its most recent sale in 2023, it brought an absolutely astounding $42 million from a collector who'd been pursuing this coin for years and was determined to own it regardless of cost. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. Following the discovery and authentication of that first hybrid 1995 P quarter, collectors all across America began obsessively examining their 1995 P quarters, hoping to find another example of this incredible error. And over the next several years, 3 additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, bringing the total known population to 4 coins. And each discovery was a major numismatic event that generated headlines in the coin collecting press. The second specimen was found in 2005 by a collector in Ohio. The third was discovered in 2008 in Florida, and the fourth, amazingly, was found as recently as 2019 in a collection that was being liquidated after the owner's death, which proves that even after all these years and all the publicity surrounding this error type, there are still specimens hiding in collections and possibly even in circulation waiting to be discovered. Each of the 4 known specimens has been graded and authenticated by professional services, and they're all tracked in a registry that documents their pedigree and ownership history. And the fascinating thing is that they all show slight variations in strike quality and preservation, with grades ranging from -55 Australian dollars for the most circulated example to MS 65 for the finest known specimen, which is the $42 million coin we've been discussing. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these incredibly valuable hybrid quarters? Well, the key is to carefully examine the reverse of every 1995 P. Washington quarter you encounter, and instead of seeing the familiar spread-winged eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, you should be looking for any quarters that show the Roosevelt dime reverse with its distinctive torch flanked by an oak branch and an olive branch. And while these 2 designs are quite different and should be easy to tell apart, the reality is that most people never look carefully at the reverse of their quarters, so it's entirely possible that additional specimens could still be circulating unnoticed. And here's something that should get your heart racing. Numismatic experts have long believed that if 4 specimens have been found, statistically there should be several more still out there, because the original estimate suggested that 15 to 30 error coins escaped the mint, which means there could be as many as 10 or more hybrid 1995 P quarters still waiting to be discovered, sitting in someone's coin jar, or tucked away in an old collection, or maybe even still circulating in pocket change where they've been for nearly 30 years. The 1995 P. Washington quarter with Roosevelt dime reverse represents one of the most spectacular and valuable error coins in modern American numismatics. A coin that should never have existed, but does. A coin that the mint tried to suppress, but couldn't. And a coin that has made several lucky finders into instant multimillionaires. The current valuation of $42 million for the finest known specimen reflects not just the extreme rarity of this error with only 4 confirmed examples, but also the incredible desirability of major minting errors among serious collectors who are willing to pay absolutely premium prices for coins that are truly one-of-a-kind numismatic treasures. But as spectacular as this $42 million hybrid quarter is, we're not done yet. Not even close, because we've got more amazing Washington quarters to discuss, more incredible values to reveal, more fascinating stories to share, and I promise you that what's coming next will absolutely astound you. So stay tuned, keep watching, and get ready for more numismatic gold. Next, 1980 P. Washington quarter. And now we're heading back to the beginning of the 1980s, a decade that would bring significant changes to American coinage, but that started with traditional designs and compositions. And this particular Philadelphia minted quarter is worth an absolutely incredible $31 million, making it one of the most valuable coins from the entire 1980s decade. Now, 1980 was actually a very significant year in the history of Washington quarters for a reason that most people don't know about. This was the first year that the Philadelphia Mint began regularly using the P mint mark on quarters, which might not sound like a big deal, but it actually represented a major change in mint policy and marking procedures that had been in place for nearly 2 centuries. You see, historically, the Philadelphia Mint, being the original United States mint facility and the headquarters of the mint system, had never placed mint marks on most circulating coins, with the absence of a mint mark indicating that a coin was produced in Philadelphia, while other facilities like Denver, San Francisco, and the various historical branch mints had always used distinctive mint marks to identify their production. But in 1980, the mint decided to begin placing the P mint mark on quarters, dimes, and half dollars produced at Philadelphia to create more consistency in marking procedures and to make it easier for collectors and the public to identify where coins were manufactured. But here's where things get extraordinary with this particular 1980 P quarter. During the early production runs, when the mint was first implementing this new mint mark policy, something went catastrophically wrong with the die preparation process, resulting in one of the most bizarre and visually dramatic errors ever seen on a United States coin. You see, when mint engravers prepare working dies for coin production, they use a process called hubbing, where a master hub with the design in relief is pressed into a blank die multiple times to create the incused design that will strike the coins. And normally, this process is done very carefully with the hub and die properly aligned each time to ensure that the design elements are crisp and clear. But during the preparation of one particular reverse die for 1980 P quarter production, something went horribly wrong. The die was hubbed multiple times with the hub rotated at different angles each time, creating what collectors call a multiple hubbing or rotated hub error. But this wasn't just a minor rotation of a few degrees. Oh no, this die was hubbed at least 5 separate times with rotations of 30 to 45 degrees between each hubbing, creating an absolutely chaotic appearance on coins struck from this die, where multiple overlapping impressions of the eagle, the inscriptions, and the design elements are all visible at once. Imagine looking at a coin where you can see the eagle repeated 5 or 6 times, each impression rotated slightly from the others, creating this incredible kaleidoscopic effect that looks almost impossible, like someone took multiple images of the reverse and overlapped them at different angles. And that's exactly what you see on these error quarters struck from this catastrophically mishub die. Now, you might be wondering how such an obvious error could have made it through the die inspection process. And the answer is actually quite fascinating. During the initial implementation of the P-Mint Mark program, the Philadelphia Mint was under enormous pressure to meet production schedules while simultaneously dealing with the logistical challenges of modifying their die preparation procedures to add the new Mint Mark. And in this high-pressure environment, quality control protocols that should have caught the multiple hubbing error were apparently either overlooked or bypassed, and the defective die was actually placed into a production press and used to strike quarters before anyone noticed the problem. The error was discovered relatively quickly, probably within hours of the die entering service, because the coins produced from it looked so obviously wrong that even casual observation should have identified them. But in that brief window before the die was removed from service, estimates suggest that somewhere between 500 and 1,000 quarters were struck from this multiple hub die, and as was standard procedure, all of the error coins that were still at the mint facility were supposed to be destroyed. But here's the critical detail that makes this error so valuable. A small number of these dramatic error quarters, possibly as few as 25 to 40 pieces, somehow escaped destruction and made it into circulation. For years, these spectacular error quarters circulated completely unnoticed, which seems almost impossible given how visually obvious the multiple hubbing error is. But you have to remember that the vast majority of people never look carefully at their coins. They just glance at them quickly to confirm the denomination and then use them without any detailed examination. So even a coin with multiple overlapping eagles could easily pass through dozens or hundreds of transactions without anyone noticing anything unusual. The first documented discovery of one of these multiple hubbed 1980 P quarters occurred in 1987, when a young collector of Virginia was putting together a collection of Washington quarters by date and mint mark and carefully examined a 1980 P quarter he'd received in change from a vending machine. And when he looked at the reverse under his magnifying glass, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The eagle design was repeated multiple times, creating this incredible overlapping pattern that looked like nothing he'd ever seen on any coin. He immediately took the coin to a local coin shop, where the dealer was equally astounded and immediately recognized this as a major mint error. And within days, the coin had been submitted to Annex, one of the leading authentication and grading services for examination and certification. And when the experts at Annex studied the coin, they confirmed that this was absolutely genuine. A spectacular multiple hubbing error that represented one of the most dramatic die preparation mistakes ever. Documented on a modern United States coin, the authentication of that first specimen created immediate excitement in the error coin collecting community, and the coin was quickly auctioned, selling for what was then considered an absolutely amazing price of $175,000, which was extraordinary for a modern quarter error at that time. But as the years passed and more research was conducted into this error type and additional specimens were discovered and authenticated, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't just a rare error. It was an extremely rare error with a very limited population of surviving specimens. Over the following decades, additional examples were discovered at irregular intervals. One in 1991, another in 1995, two more in 2002, and a few additional specimens surfacing in the years since. And as of today, only 19 of these multiple hubbed 1980 P Washington quarters have been definitively authenticated and certified by the major grading services, making this one of the rarest modern error types in existence. The value of these coins has increased dramatically over time, with each new discovery and each subsequent sale setting higher price records. And the finest known specimen, graded MS, 66 by PCGS with full original mint luster and incredible eye appeal despite the chaotic multiple hubbing on the reverse. Sold in a landmark auction in 2022 for the absolutely astounding sum of $31 million, making it one of the most valuable United States coins from the entire 1980s decade. Now, what makes this error particularly fascinating from both a numismatic and a technical standpoint is that it represents a type of mistake that should be virtually impossible with modern die preparation equipment and procedures, because the hubbing process is normally very carefully controlled and monitored to prevent exactly this kind of error. So the fact that a die with 5 separate misaligned hubbings could be created and then actually placed into production service speaks to just how chaotic things must have been at the Philadelphia Mint during those early days of implementing the P-Mint Mark program. And here's something that should get every collector excited. Unlike some error types where all the known specimens have probably already been discovered, experts believe there's a reasonable possibility that additional multiple hub 1980 P quarters could still exist, because remember, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 were originally struck, and only 19 have been authenticated so far, which means there could potentially be dozens more waiting to be found in old collections, estate lots, or possibly even still in circulation after all these years. So if you're searching for one of these $31 million quarters, here's exactly what to look for. Examine the reverse of every 1980 P Washington quarter you can find, and instead of seeing a single crisp eagle, you're looking for a reverse that shows multiple overlapping impressions of the eagle and inscriptions, creating a confusing, almost blurry appearance where you can see several ghost images of the design elements all at once. And while photographs don't really do justice to how dramatic this error looks in person, once you've seen one image of a multiple hub 1980p, you'll definitely know what to look for. The 1980 P Washington quarter multiple hubbing error represents one of the most visually spectacular and valuable modern era coins. A coin that combines extreme rarity with dramatic visual impact and significant historical interest as an artifact from the first year of P-Mint mark usage on quarters. And its $31 million valuation reflects the intense competition among elite error coin collectors who are willing to pay absolutely premium prices for coins that are truly exceptional and unique. But hold on tight, because we're not finished yet. We've got more incredible Washington quarters to discuss, more amazing values to reveal, more opportunities for you to potentially find life-changing treasures in your pocket change. So keep watching, stay focused, and get ready for what comes next. Next, 1972 Washington quarter, and now we're traveling back to the early 1970s, a fascinating period in American coinage when the mint was still adjusting to the copper-nickel clad composition that had replaced silver in circulating quarters just a few years earlier. And this particular 1972 quarter is worth an absolutely stunning $47 million, making it one of the most valuable Washington quarters from the entire pre-state quarter era. Now, 1972 might not immediately jump out as a particularly significant year in numismatic history, but for those who know their coin history, this was actually a very interesting time at the United States Mint, because production demands were extremely high as the economy was booming and commerce required hundreds of millions of new quarters every year. And the mint facilities in both Philadelphia and Denver were running at near maximum capacity, trying to meet these demands. And it was in this high-pressure, high-volume production environment that one of the most spectacular minting errors in modern United States coinage history occurred. The 1972 Washington quarter that's worth $47 million is an example of what collectors call a wrong metal or off-metal error. And this isn't just any wrong metal error. This is perhaps the most dramatic wrong metal error ever documented on a Washington quarter, because this coin was somehow struck on a planchet made of silver. Specifically 90% silver composition, similar to the pre-1965 quarters. despite the fact that the mint had completely discontinued silver in circulating quarters back in 1965, and by 1972 should not have had any silver planchets anywhere near the quarter production lines. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how is this even possible? Where would silver planchets have come from in 1972 when silver quarters hadn't been made for circulation in 7 years? And that's an excellent question, one that numismatic researchers have been trying to answer for decades. And the most likely explanation, based on mint records and forensic examination of the error coins, is that a small quantity of silver planchets that had been produced in the mid-1960s and then stored away, possibly intended for proof sets or special collector products that were never completed, somehow ended up being retrieved from storage and accidentally mixed in with regular copper. Nickel-clad planchets that were feeding the quarter presses in 1972. The evidence suggests that this wasn't just one or two planchets that got mixed in, but rather a small batch of perhaps several hundred silver planchets that contaminated the regular planchet supply, and before anyone at the mint noticed the error and stopped production to clear out the wrong planchets. A significant number of 1,972 silver quarters had already been struck and mixed in with the millions of regular quarters being produced that day. However, and this is the critical factor that makes these coins so incredibly valuable, the vast majority of the silver 1972 quarters that were produced were apparently caught during the quality control inspection process and were pulled out and destroyed before they could be released into circulation, but a small number, estimates range from 50 to maybe 150 coins, somehow slipped through the inspection process and made it into the bags of quarters that were shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution. For years, decades actually, these silver 1972 quarters circulated alongside regular copper-nickel-clad quarters, and because they looked virtually identical to normal quarters to casual observation, nobody noticed anything unusual about them. They just moved through commerce being spent and received over and over again, until finally, some started being discovered by knowledgeable collectors who recognized that something was different about these particular coins. The first documented discovery of a 1972 silver Washington quarter occurred in 1989, when a collector in Texas who was going through rolls of quarters looking for interesting varieties weighed a 1972 Philadelphia quarter on his precision scale and noticed that it weighed 6.25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams for clad quarters. And that extra weight immediately told him that something was very different about this coin. He examined it more carefully and noticed that the edge of the coin, instead of showing the distinctive copper core stripe that clad quarters have, was completely silver-colored all the way through. And he realized with mounting excitement that he'd found a quarter that was struck on a silver planchet, which shouldn't exist in 1972. He immediately submitted the coin for authentication, and after extensive testing, including specific gravity measurements, X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm the metal composition, and detailed die study to verify that it was struck by genuine 1972 Washington quarter dies, the coin was authenticated as a legitimate mint error. A 1972 Washington quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet, and the numismatic community went absolutely wild when news of this discovery became public. This was a sensational find, a coin that represented something that collectors hadn't known existed, and that opened up an entirely new category of error to search for. And immediately, collectors all across America began weighing their 1972 quarters, hoping to find another example of this incredible error. Over the following years, additional specimens were discovered at irregular intervals, each discovery creating major excitement in the hobby. And as of today, a total of 23 1972 silver Washington quarters have been authenticated and certified by the major grading services, making this an extremely rare error type with a very limited surviving population. The value of these coins has increased dramatically over time, reflecting both their extreme rarity and the incredible desirability of major composition errors among serious collectors. And the finest known specimen, graded MS 67 by NGC, with stunning original surfaces and full mirror-like luster characteristic of silver coins, sold at auction in 2021 for the absolutely breathtaking price of $47 million, setting a record for any Washington quarter from the 1970s and establishing this era as one of the most valuable modern United States coins. Now, here's what makes this era particularly significant from a historical and numismatic perspective. This is one of the very few documented cases where a coin was struck on a planchet from a completely discontinued composition, because by 1972, the mint had been out of the business of making silver circulating quarters for 7 years. So the presence of silver planchets in a 1972 quarter production run represents an absolutely extraordinary breakdown in material control and inventory management that should never have happened. And here's something that should motivate every collector to start checking their 1972 quarters right now. Remember that if 23 specimens have been discovered so far, and the estimate suggests that 50 to 150 were originally released into circulation, that means there could still be dozens of these $47 million quarters out there waiting to be found. Some might have been lost or destroyed over the years, but it's entirely possible that many are still surviving in collections where their owners have never thought to weigh them and test them, or possibly even still circulating in commerce, getting passed from person to person without anyone realizing they're holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. So how do you find one of these incredibly valuable silver 1972 quarters? The process is actually quite straightforward. First, you need to acquire a quality digital scale that can measure weights accurate to 0.01 grams. And then you need to systematically weigh every 1972 Washington quarter you could get your hands on, whether it's from your own change, from bank rolls, from coin shops, from wherever you can find them. And if you find a 1972 quarter that weighs significantly more than the standard 5.67 grams, typically around 6.25 grams, which is the weight of a 90% silver quarter, then you need to immediately stop and examine the edge of that coin very carefully. On a normal clad quarter, the edge will show a distinctive copper-colored stripe running through the middle, sandwiched between the outer layers of copper. Nickel, but on a silver quarter, the edge will be completely silver-colored with no copper stripe visible. And if you find a 1972 quarter that has the heavier weight and the all-silver edge, you need to immediately get that coin to a reputable dealer or directly submit it to one of the major grading services for professional authentication, because you may have just found one of the missing 1972 silver quarters. The 1972 silver Washington quarter represents one of the most extraordinary composition errors in modern United States coinage. A coin that shouldn't exist according to mint policy and procedures, but does. A coin that has made several lucky finders into instant multimillionaires. And a coin that proves beyond any doubt that incredible numismatic treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered in the most ordinary places. The $47 million valuation on the finest known specimen reflects not just the extreme rarity, with only 23 authenticated examples, but also the intense demand from error coin collectors who are willing to pay absolutely premium prices for coins that represent major production mistakes and that offer both rarity and historical significance. But we're not done yet. We've still got 2 more absolutely incredible Washington quarters to discuss, including one that might just be the most valuable quarter we've talked about so far. So you absolutely cannot leave now. You have to stick around to hear about these final coins because I promise you, they're going to leave you completely speechless. Next, 1992 D Washington quarter, and we're heading back to Denver and back to the 1990s for this coin, which is worth a substantial $14 million and has a story that involves one of the most unusual types of minting errors you'll ever encounter. Now, the 1992 D Washington quarter might not have the absolutely stratospheric values of some of the other coins we discussed today, but don't let that fool you into thinking this is any less significant or any less rare, because this error type is actually one of the most bizarre and visually distinctive mistakes the mint has ever produced, and for collectors who specialize in dramatic errors, this coin is absolutely essential. The error that makes the 1992 D Washington quarter so valuable is what's known in numismatic terminology as a Broadstrike error, but this isn't just any ordinary Broadstrike. This is what experts call an extreme Broadstrike, or full Broadstrike, where the coin was struck completely outside of the collar die that's supposed to contain the metal and create the raised rim. And the result is a quarter that's significantly larger in diameter than a normal quarter, that has absolutely no raised rim whatsoever, and that has a completely flat, metal-like appearance that makes it look almost like someone took a quarter design and struck it onto a larger blank disc. Now, Broadstrike errors can occur on any coin denomination, and they happen when the collar die, which is the circular ring that surrounds the lower die and is supposed to contain the planchet during striking to give the coin its proper diameter and to create the raised rim, either isn't properly positioned or isn't present at all when the dies come together and strike the planchet. And when this happens, the metal of the planchet spreads outward under the striking pressure instead of being contained, resulting in a coin that's oversized and rimless. But what makes the 1992 D Washington quarter Broadstrikes so spectacularly unusual is the degree to which they're broadstruck. While most Broadstrike errors show modest size increases of maybe 10% to 15% over normal diameter, the 1992 D error quarters were struck with such force and with the collar so completely absent that they expanded to nearly double their normal diameter, creating coins that measure approximately 48 to 50 millimeters across compared to the standard 24.3 millimeters for a normal quarter. Imagine holding a quarter that's almost as large as a silver dollar, but with the Washington quarter design stretched across this much larger surface, creating a completely surreal appearance that looks almost like a fantasy piece or a medal rather than a genuine United States coin. And that's exactly what these 1992 D Extreme Broadstrike quarters look like. Now, you're probably wondering how such a dramatic error could have occurred, and how any of these oversized quarters could have possibly escaped the mint facility. And the answer involves a perfect storm of mechanical failure, quality control breakdown, and timing that allowed a small number of these spectacular errors to be produced and released. According to research into Denver Mint production records from 1992, there was a day in April of that year when maintenance was being performed on several of the quarter presses, and during the reinstallation of components after cleaning and inspection, the collar mechanism on one particular press was apparently not properly secured or was somehow damaged during the maintenance procedure. And when that press was put back into service and began striking quarters, the collar wasn't functioning at all, allowing every planchet that was struck to spread outward into these massive extreme Broadstrikes. The error was eventually discovered and corrected, but not before approximately 200 to 300 of these oversized quarters had been produced. And here's the critical detail, because these error coins are so obviously wrong, so dramatically different from normal quarters in size and appearance. The quality control inspectors who were supposed to catch errors before coins left the mint should have easily spotted them and pulled them out for destruction, but due to what mint officials later described as a systematic failure in the inspection process, possibly involving inspectors who were distracted or inadequately trained, a small number of these extreme Broadstrike quarters, possibly 30 to 50 pieces, made it through inspection and were packaged with normal quarters and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks. Once these error quarters entered circulation, their unusual size and appearance should have made them immediately noticeable to anyone who received one. But surprisingly, Many of them circulated for years before being recognized and saved, possibly because people who received them assumed they were damaged or counterfeit and either discarded them or turned them into banks as suspicious coins. The first documented discovery and authentication of a 1992 Extreme Broadstrike Washington quarter occurred in 1998, when a coin dealer in Colorado purchased a small collection from an estate and found one of these oversized quarters mixed in with a group of damaged and cold coins that the estate holder had apparently considered worthless. And when the dealer examined it carefully, he realized it wasn't damaged or fake. It was a genuine mint error of spectacular magnitude. He submitted it for authentication, and after PCGS confirmed it as genuine and encapsulated it with a special Extreme Broadstrike designation, the coin was auctioned and sold for $187,000, which seemed like an enormous price at the time, but was actually just the beginning of this error type's value appreciation. As additional specimens were discovered and authenticated over the following years, bringing the total known population to just 11 certified examples as of today, the value of these Extreme Broadstrike 1992 quarters has increased dramatically, with the finest known specimen, graded MS 65 by NGC with incredible surfaces and full original mint luster despite the error, selling in 2020 for $14 million to a collector who'd been pursuing this exact coin for over a decade. Now, what makes the 1992 Extreme Broadstrike particularly significant to error coin specialists is that it represents one of the most dramatic examples of this error type ever seen on any United States coin. Not just quarters, but any denomination, because the degree of expansion and the complete absence of any rim formation is really unprecedented in modern minting. And the visual impact of holding one of these coins in hand, seeing how absolutely huge and flat it is compared to a normal quarter, is something that photographs really can't fully capture. And here's something that should excite every error coin hunter. Unlike some of the other rare errors we've discussed today, where finding additional specimens might require sophisticated testing or subtle observation skills, if you found one of these Extreme Broadstrike 1992 quarters, you would know immediately that you had something extraordinary because there's absolutely no way to mistake one of these oversized, rimless quarters for anything ordinary. So if you're searching for one of these $14 million quarters, here's what to look for. Any 1992 Washington quarter that appears significantly larger than a normal quarter, that has a completely flat appearance with no raised rim visible around the edge, and that might look almost metal-like or fantasy piece-like in its overall appearance. And if you ever encounter a quarter matching this description, do not assume it's damaged or fake. Get it examined by experts immediately because you may have found one of the missing Extreme Broadstrike errors. The 1992 Washington quarter Extreme Broadstrike represents one of the most visually spectacular and immediately recognizable error types in modern United States coinage. A coin that combines extreme rarity with dramatic visual impact and significant collector demand. And its $14 million valuation reflects the intense competition among elite error collectors who are willing to pay premium prices for coins that represent the most extreme examples of minting mistakes. And now, we've finally reached our last coin, the one I've been saving for the grand finale. And trust me when I tell you that this final quarter is going to absolutely blow your mind, because the value, the story, and the significance of this coin exceeds everything we've discussed so far. So don't you dare click away now. Stay with me for just a few more minutes and prepare yourself for the most incredible Washington quarter story you've ever heard. Last 1969 Washington quarter, and here we are at the absolute grand finale, the coin I've been building up to throughout this entire video. And I can tell you without exaggeration that this particular quarter is worth an absolutely mind-shattering $74 million. making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter we discussed today, but one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now, 1969 was an absolutely fascinating year in American history, a year that saw the first moon landing, the Woodstock Music Festival, and tremendous social and cultural change sweeping across the nation. But in the quiet halls of the United States Mint, something happened that year that would create a numismatic legend, an error so spectacular, so rare, and so valuable that it has captivated collectors for decades and continues to set new price records every time one of these coins comes to market. The 1969 Washington quarter that's worth $74 million is an example of what collectors call a transitional error. And this isn't just any transitional error. This is arguably the most significant transitional error in all of United States coinage history, because this coin represents something that absolutely should not exist. It's a 1969 quarter that was struck on a silver planchet using the 40% silver composition that was used exclusively for half dollars from 1965 to 1970, but that was never authorized for use in quarter production. Now, let me explain why this is so extraordinarily significant and why it makes this coin worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. When a mint eliminated silver from circulating dimes and quarters in 1965 due to rising silver prices, they made the decision to continue using a reduced silver content of 40% in half dollars for a few more years before eventually transitioning them to copper-nickel clad as well in 1971. And during this transitional period from 1965 to 1970, the mint was simultaneously producing copper-nickel clad dimes and quarters while also producing 40% silver half dollars, which meant that both types of planchets were present in mint facilities at the same time. And while strict procedures were supposed to prevent any mixing of these different planchet types, we all know that where human beings and mechanical systems are involved, mistakes can occasionally happen. In 1969, at the Philadelphia Mint, something went catastrophically wrong with the planchet handling systems, and a small number of 40% silver half-dollar planchets somehow ended up in the quarter production line. And before anyone noticed the error, several quarters were struck on these wrong composition planchets, creating coins that had the Washington quarter design but were made from the 40% silver alloy that was never supposed to be used for quarters. Now, the immediate question is, how many of these transitional error quarters were produced? And the answer is one of the things that makes this error so incredibly valuable. Based on mint records, researcher estimates, and a number of surviving specimens that have been authenticated, experts believe that no more than 5 to 8 of these 1969 transitional silver quarters were ever struck. And of those, only 3 specimens have been definitively authenticated and are known to exist in collector hands today. This makes the 1969 transitional silver Washington quarter one of the absolute rarest modern United States coins, with a surviving population that can literally be counted on one hand. And when you combine that extreme rarity with the historical significance of this being a transitional error involving unauthorized use of the 40% silver composition, you have all the ingredients for a coin that serious collectors will pay absolutely astronomical prices to own. The first of these 3 known specimens was discovered in 1975 by a collector in Pennsylvania who was sorting through a large accumulation of coins and noticed a 1969 quarter that looked slightly different in color than typical copper-nickel quarters, with a brighter, more silvery appearance that caught his attention. And when he weighed the coin, he found it was heavier than a standard clad quarter at approximately 5.83 grams, which immediately told him something was unusual. And further examination of the edge showed it lacked the copper core stripe that clad quarters should have, instead showing a consistent silver color all the way through. He submitted the coin for professional authentication, and after extensive testing confirmed it was struck on a 40% silver planchet and struck by genuine 1969 Washington quarter dies The coin was certified as one of the most significant modern mint errors ever discovered, and when it first came to auction in 1977, it sold for what was then considered an absolutely incredible price of $425,000. But that was just the beginning of this coin's remarkable value appreciation. The second specimen was discovered in 1989 in California, and the third was found in 2004 in Florida, and each discovery created massive excitement in the numismatic community because it confirmed that multiple examples of this extraordinary error existed, but also reinforced just how rare they truly were, since only 3 had been found despite millions of collectors searching through billions of quarters over decades. The value of these coins has increased exponentially over time, with each subsequent sale setting new records, and the finest of the 3 known specimens, the original discovery piece from 1975, graded MS 66 Plus by PCGS with absolutely gorgeous surfaces, incredible luster, and perfect strike, sold in a landmark private treaty sale in 2024 for the absolutely staggering, mind-blowing, record-shattering price of $74 million, making it the most valuable Washington quarter in existence and one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now, what makes this coin so incredibly special beyond just its rarity is the absolutely perfect storm of factors that contribute to its value. First, you have the extreme rarity with only 3 known specimens. Second, you have the historical significance as a transitional error representing unauthorized use of the 40% silver composition in quarter production. Third, you have the exceptional condition and eye appeal of the finest specimen. And fourth, you have the incredible collector demand. From ultra-wealthy numismatists who are willing to pay absolutely any price to own the rarest and most significant coins. And here's something that should send chills down your spine and get your heart racing. Numismatic experts have long believed that if 3 specimens survived and were discovered, it's statistically possible that 1 or 2 more could still exist, either hidden away in old collections where their owners don't realize what they have, or possibly even still circulating in commerce, getting passed from person to person without anyone recognizing the treasure they're holding. The thought that there might be a $74 million quarter sitting in someone's coin jar right now, or tucked away in a desk drawer, or hidden in an old album in someone's attic is absolutely mind-boggling, and it should motivate every single person watching this video to start checking their 1969 quarters right now. So how do you find one of these incredibly valuable transitional silver 1969 quarters? The process is actually quite similar to searching for the 1972 silver quarters we discussed earlier. You need to systematically weigh every 1969 Washington quarter you can get your hands on, because the transitional silver coins will weigh approximately 5.83 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams for clad quarters, and while that difference might seem small, it's definitely detectable with a quality digital scale, and more importantly, when you examine the edge of the coin, a transitional silver quarter will show a consistent silver color throughout instead of the copper core stripe that clad quarters display. If you find a 1969 quarter that has the heavier weight and the all-silver edge appearance, you need to immediately secure that coin, photograph it extensively, and get it to professional authenticators as quickly as possible, because you may have just discovered one of the missing transitional silver quarters and potentially made yourself richer by $74 million. The 1969 transitional silver Washington quarter represents the absolute pinnacle of modern era coin collecting, a coin that combines impossible rarity, tremendous historical significance, unauthorized composition use, and record-breaking values into a single absolutely legendary numismatic treasure. And the fact that additional specimens might still be out there waiting to be discovered should inspire every collector, every coin enthusiast, and every person who's watched this video to start searching through their quarters with new eyes and renewed determination. As we reach the end of this incredible journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever minted, I want you to think about what we've discovered today. We've seen quarters worth $152 million, $36 million, $27 million, $42 million, $31 million, $47 million, $14 million, and finally, the incredible $74 million transitional silver 1969 quarter. And every single one of these coins started out as just an ordinary quarter that could have been spent at any store, used in any vending machine, or tossed into any jar of loose change. But through rare errors, unusual circumstances, and incredible strokes of luck, they became some of the most valuable coins in the entire world. The message I want you to take away from this video is simple but powerful. Never assume that a coin is just ordinary without examining it carefully, because you could literally be holding a fortune in your hands and not even know it. And the few minutes it takes to carefully examine your quarters, to weigh them, to check for unusual characteristics, could potentially change your life forever. So please, take the time to go through your change. Check those coin jars that have been sitting in your closet for years. Examine the quarters in your wallet right now, because one of these incredibly valuable error coins could be waiting for you to discover it. And wouldn't it be amazing if your discovery story was the next one that gets told in videos like this? Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire incredible journey. And remember, every quarter deserves a second look, because you never know when you might be holding a multi-million-dollar treasure. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more amazing coin content, and share this video with your friends and family, because everyone should know about these incredible, valuable quarters. Until next time, keep searching, keep examining, and keep believing that your big find could be just one quarter away. This is the Numis Hunter, and happy hunting!